Hi, I'm Nat, and today I want to talk about parents protesting against school boards, which is something we've been seeing a lot of in Canada and the United States in the recent few years, because school curriculum has become more of a religious sort of indoctrination for children. However, now it is towards the religion and the cult of the LGBTQIA+ new agenda and the gender ideologues and the activists behind it. But if I told you that religious parents went up against a group of Antifa and of counter-protesters at a school board meeting, you would probably think that I'm talking about white Christian parents. But no, in this case, it wasn't the white Christian parents that went up against Antifa, but rather Muslim, Hispanic, and Armenian parents that are now also claiming that due to their religion, they want to be able to pull their kids out of schools and because we're starting Pride Month, for the Pride weeks that these schools want to plan, where they'll give most lessons only focusing on LGBTQIA+ stuff and cult indoctrination, which they already do anyways, a lot of. But there's two stories that came out yesterday, which happened yesterday, where parents went up against Antifa members and counter-protesters just because they want to have the ability to remove their kids from schools if they do not agree with what is being taught. Because now that they're realizing what is actually in the school curriculum and what their children are being given in the forms of books and education, and the focus of a lot of these schools on sexual orientation, gender identity, rather than math, science, and reading, well, parents are starting to get more and more concerned. And now it isn't just the white Christian parents, but I think it's a wide array of colors, and it's a very diverse group of parents that are now standing and banding together to fight against the indoctrination of their own children. So in Maryland first, Maryland Muslims blast schools' LGBTQ indoctrination, demand right to opt kids out. And freedom of religion is a fundamental human right that protects the conscience of old people and allows us to think, is what someone says. This is from the Post-Millennial, and just quickly to get the story. On Tuesday, Muslims and Islamists gathered to protest the Montgomery County, Maryland School Board, fighting to be allowed to opt their kids out of LGBTQ+ teachings by the school on religious grounds. The parents were met with counter-protests and by progressive activists waving what some call the Progress Pride flag, which is that ugly, ugly flag with the yellow asexual, no, it's not asexual, it's the yellow intersex thing, and then the other brown and trans and black stripes kind of eating the regular pride flag. And this is an example, this is a video of kind of what was happening in Maryland. And Andy No, an independent reporter, writes, liberals were left stunned as Muslims and Islamists gathered on Tuesday to protest the Montgomery County, Maryland School Board over its LGBTQ+ curriculum. The Muslims want to be able to remove their children from the classroom when that material is taught. And here we see it is a very different brand, I guess, of protesters than the ones that are usually sold to the American and Canadian public, which are Christians that are hateful and bigoted, then they hate LGBTQ+ people. Well, in this case, it's not really. It's a really different crowd. And I think, and we'll see when the camera pans around, that the counter-protesters, the LGBTQ+ cult members, and Antifa were just kind of left stunned that this is the crowd that they were up against when they thought that they were just going up against their regular run-of-the-mill Christian extremists, which the FBI has deemed just regular parents as. So here we see the other side, the cult members, just kind of standing there waving the little flags and not able to say much because they're all about diversity and they're all about, welcoming everyone. And of course they can go against the white people, but it's a little harder when it's a different religion and a different reason sometimes as to why they want to get their kids out of school for that week. So that's in Maryland. And then in Glendale, California, the Daily Wire here reports Armenian Hispanic parents clash with Antifa school board over LGBTQ agenda. And tensions boiled over Tuesday night outside a California school board meeting where officials were discussing efforts to celebrate Pride Month, with parents and activists squaring off against masked Antifa members. The clash came outside the Glendale Unified School District's headquarters, where parents, many from the Los Angeles County city's Armenian and Hispanic communities, were blasting board members for promoting a pro-LGBTQ agenda to young children. Other speakers, including a man in a skirt and high heels, showed up to support the district's pro-Pride agenda, according to reports. And here's a little video. This one got a little bit more violent and riotous, where Armenian fathers, mostly, are just squaring off against Antifa members because they're protecting their children against the cult and the gender ideology that these insane activist lunatics want to force-feed their children. And the whole point is, these parents just want to have the option to take their children out for those days. And this is a great argument for school choice, because in the United States, you're kind of just stuck with whatever school you're assigned to. And now school boards are saying, no, your child has to attend all the Pride LGBTQ plus woke indoctrination, and you have no say in it, even though you are their parent, and you will be responsible for them long after the school and the school board is done with them. And parents should be able to decide what their child sees and not, especially on the grounds of religious freedom. I mean, if a secular parent went to a school and found out that they were teaching the Bible or the Quran or the Torah, well, they'd have issues, and they'd have the right to say schools are supposed to be secular and only teach math, science, English. Why are you teaching my children about a religion that I am not a part of? This is the same thing, except they also have the argument that in their religious beliefs, what their children are being taught is completely against them. And they have the right to believe that because they are in America. Same as within Canada. We're having the same issues here in Canada, but people are a little bit less likely to stand up, even though we've seen some examples of that happening. So in this article from the Daily Signal, it says 3 arrested after Antifa clashes with Armenian parents at California School Board meeting. And here are the called gender activists just standing there protesting. But there is a special thing I want to mention in this Daily Signal reporting, which says, additional documents reveal that Glendale staff have attempted to incorporate LGBTQ materials and ideology into other curriculum. One assistant principal even told staff to teach children that every person, by default, is queer and socialist. So we kind of see where their minds are at. And in this article from Pink News, which is an LGBTQ gay news site, they say violence breaks out at a school board meeting over Pride Month. Extremists attacked LGBTQ plus parents. And here they conveniently show someone in the Glendale area of a protester looking very blonde, very white, typical, I guess, Christian mother maybe is what they're trying to portray. And they say violence erupted outside a school board meeting as LGBTQ plus activists and right-wing groups clashed over LGBTQ plus inclusion during Pride Month. And they take a while, I think, to mention even that some of them were Armenian. I think it was all the way at the bottom. I don't want to go through all of it. But they first mentioned the Proud Boys and the Christian Nationals and the blah, 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 blah. But they really don't want to touch on the fact that a lot of these parents are coming from religions that usually are also minorities and are also protected by the diversity and inclusion ideology and tenets that these insane lunatics usually try to preach. So now they're finding themselves with Hispanic and Armenian and Muslim parents protesting their same things that the Christian white people, the bad ones, and the extremists, according to the FBI, are protesting. And now they kind of can't say anything because it also goes against what they want to do as progressives. They want to let immigration wide open, and they want to help all of these people and be a sanctuary city like California, or a sanctuary state like California is. But now, well, those people that you're trying to bring into your sanctuary city are completely against the agenda and the ideology that you're trying to force feed their children with. There is a thing I want to touch on because a lot of people don't understand why these parents are going so forcefully against the LGBTQ plus progressive school boards and schools and why they keep banning books? Well, it is because these books that most outlets won't even mention when they talk about book banning, or Ron DeSantis's, for example, parental rights in education bill, which has been deemed the Don't Say Gay bill. What a lot of the outlets and mainstream media never reports on is is the contents of these books. Why are parents so against these books being shown to their middle school children, or their sometimes elementary school children in certain cases, or to their teenagers? Well, it is because these books are highly sexualized and essentially pornographic guides and how-tos as to how to do some pretty icky, nefarious activities that teenagers, while they can find out on their own, a school and a public education institution should not be handing out and telling their students to read, especially not as figures of authority that have the full attention of these growing and learning teenagers. Schools should be focused on, number one, showing all sides of an argument or of a debate or of a situation, or just teaching about the thing itself, and especially just teaching science and math and everything else. But if you are going to give a very ideologically charged perspective, you would expect them to give the other side as well, because to learn and to educate yourself means to get all the information and then decide for yourself what you believe and what you think. That is the process of learning. But these teachers are instead now showing pornographic books to their students. So parents call police after Illinois teacher offers LGBTQ book to her students. And I won't go through all of it, but this teacher had been teaching for 20 years, and the cops got called on her after parents found out about a book that she was giving to students. So Sarah Bonner held a book tasting for students in March and offered an array of fiction and nonfiction books, including Juno Dawson's This Book is Gay, which quickly became the epicenter of a massive controversy when parents called the police over the book choice. She says, "I wanted to give them a smattering of fiction and nonfiction to choose from on that day we call Reading Monday. We just read and celebrate books." This teacher is 42, and her 8th graders snapped pictures of the book on their phones and then showed it to their parents. And why are parents so outraged about This Book is Gay? It kind of sounds innocuous, but once you learn what's in it and why it has been banned, and at the center of a lot of these book bannings is this book and another book called Genderqueer, which I invite you to Google because I can't show images of either of these on YouTube because it's explicit content, even though children in 8th grade and younger are being given it as required readings. Well, in This Book is Gay, it's essentially a how-to guidebook filled with pictures and diagrams and graphs, and it's a graphic novel kind of format where it instructs anyone who's reading it, for example, how to have gay sex, or how to use a butt plug or other sex toys. But more egregiously, and I think the main part to why a lot of people are against it, is because there's a section telling underage people how to get onto gay sex dating apps. I'm not going to mention names, but it instructs young underage people how to obfuscate the rules of those apps to be able to meet up with adult people, and well, we know what for. So why would teachers want to be giving these kinds of books to their students? It's a lot icky and completely out of place for an authority figure to be giving this kind of instruction to pretty young children. And this is what mainstream media tries to hide. They try to hide what these books are about. They try to hide how many books are being banned. And I mean, if a parent, fully knowing what this book contains and what it says, wants to buy it for their children, or if a teenager goes online or goes to a bookstore and finds it and wants to buy it and ends up with it, well, then that's very, very different to an authority figure, a teacher, giving this book directly to students and telling them, you have to read this. This is what parents are against. It is not about just yes, teenagers will always find out about sex. I worked at a high school for 3 years, so I know, here in Canada, I know a lot of how teenagers think. they will find out things. They do know a lot more than most people give them credit for. Even middle schoolers do. But it is the notion of the secular and institution of learning giving them as authority figures over these children, giving them these kinds of things and talking to them about sexuality and sexual orientation and how to have sex and how to have different kinds of sex. That should be left to the parents or probably the same teenagers to find out by themselves. But it's not that teenagers will never find out about this. It is that the places that are giving them this information should not be the places where they go to learn math and science and everything else, important things for their futures. Maybe not in schools. In schools, there's another whole chapter about why schools nowadays aren't so good. But for now, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.